There we go. Welcome to another episode of Two Truths and a Life. I'm excited for this one, but I'm also very nervous. How are you feeling about this one, baby girl?
Yeah, I'm feeling pretty nervous. Not even nervous. I don't think nervous is the word. It's more so just feeling all the emotions all at once, I think. So it's very overwhelming for me.
And fair enough. Because what are we talking about today?
We are talking about my experience with domestic violence, but we won't be just touching on it. We are going deep.
Yeah, we'll be revealing everything, talking about the experience that Tiani had, which even for me, someone that's seen a lot of stuff in my time, really shook me when she first told me about everything that took place. And so just a word of warning that this may trigger you. There might be emotions, feelings and things that come up for you also. So this is, I guess, a bit of a pre-warning that there will be a lot of heavy stuff spoken about in this podcast. And so for any woman or man who may have experienced domestic violence themselves, this may be triggering. We wanted to give you guys a warning about that. But we're here. How are you feeling?
Yeah, I'm all right.
Okay.
Let's do it.
So I remember when you and I first started talking and seeing each other, one of the things you said was that you wanted to start a charity to work with women and children who have struggled through domestic violence. And I guess when you said that, it was something that really drew me towards you, because I was like, this girl wants to help, women and children. She wants to really help others. And obviously you said it was through your own experience, but I had I couldn't grasp, I guess, without you actually explaining what had taken place, the ordeal that you'd been through, the things that you'd survived. And I just took it with a grain of salt, like I had domestic violence, because I think it's a word that gets thrown around so often, as we spoke about on previous podcasts, right? I've been through domestic violence, or not even just that, right? But like also a misunderstanding of what domestic violence or DV is.
Or how many different circumstances domestic violence comes in.
Yeah,
it's
right.
not just a physical aspect.
Yeah, there's multifaceted, right? There's so many different elements to it, and it's not just physical. There's like mental, emotional abuse, sexual abuse, obviously as well, which is something we touched on just a couple of days ago, and I'm sure we'll touch on during this as well. But I guess this is to paint a picture of, I guess, what you went through, what you survived, but also to sort of help people to understand the deep healing that you've done to become the woman that you are now. And I guess it's a really good opportunity to put this first and say that, if you can do what you've done to become the woman that you've become after everything that you went through, it's really living proof that any woman can do it. And it wasn't easy for you. We've had many discussions about this and the multiple things that have taken place in your life, even after the fact, that have obviously led us to this relationship. But it is something that can be done.
Yeah, definitely.
So
I'm walking proof.
You are, exactly right. You are walking proof. And so, just again, there is a high probability of triggering for someone that may have previously struggled in domestic violence situations. So that is a warning. And, if something does come up, feel free to please reach out to either myself or Tiani to discuss whatever it might be that comes up. That being said, though, triggers are also a beautiful thing, because they act as a opportunity to look at anything that we haven't healed through yet. There's a reason that triggers come up. It's an old wound being rubbed, and so it's also an invitation to potentially look into that.
Yeah, I love that.
So I guess let's start by talking about your relationships in the past. We've touched on this a little bit. With obviously, growing up in a stable household and all that sort of stuff. And I guess when it comes to domestic violence, a lot of people think that you have to come from a broken home to attract that kind of relationship, right?
Yeah, that was the furthest of what I experienced in my childhood. I have had the most incredible childhood. My mum and dad are still together. My grandparents are still together. When it comes to family and my memories of growing up, it was honestly just such an incredible journey, and I never seen domestic violence. I didn't even know what domestic violence meant. So now experiencing everything that I've experienced, it is really hard, and I am very grateful. One thing I always say is I'm very, very grateful to be able to compare and look back at what I had within my household, because not many people that have had domestic violence experiences, they've grown up around domestic violence. So it's kind of like that is familiar. That's a familiar territory for them.
They go back to what feels most comfortable for the
Yeah.
nervous system because they're conditioned to that, right?
Yeah.
I think the other thing as well that we've spoken about is just how grateful you are for the support network you do have around you, right? Because you've been able to surround yourself with beautiful humans and had really, really good people in your life, which was a big part of you being able to get through this in the way that you did, which allowed you to heal.
100%. If it wasn't for especially my family, my mum and my dad, throughout that time in my life, I don't know where I would be. And also my lawyer. My lawyer was, I know this sounds really silly, but I have a special place in my heart for my lawyer, Christy, that took me through that journey, because somewhat I felt as though, and I want to touch on this in the last bit of this podcast,
For sure.
but I felt like I couldn't really speak to anybody about my experience. Number one, I was really embarrassed. That...
When you say you're embarrassed, what was it that was coming up for you which was preventing you from being able to speak about this with others?
I was embarrassed because I had allowed somebody to come into my life and just destroy everything that I'd once built for myself. I allowed somebody to, I guess, take me on a path that just wasn't me. And that was my own choice. Like, I allowed myself to do that.
Of course.
But it was because of other circumstances before meeting my DVX that I ended up in that space.
Of course.
So, yeah.
So can we, I guess, start by talking through a few of the events that led up to this relationship taking place? If I'm not mistaken, you were going through a business breakdown and also the breakdown of your relationship with your kid's father.
Yeah, so I didn't realise how much this had affected me until, healing. But I was going through a lot with business. I had 2 hair salons. I had 2 kids under the age of, at that time would have been under the age of 2. And I worked all the time. That the salons were my absolute life, and it got to a point where that was my identity. Nobody knew me anything but I was going to say the name of it, but I actually won't. But no one knew me outside of that business. So, yeah.
Your whole identity was tied up in that business, right?
Completely. Yep. So it wasn't only the breakdown of my relationship with the kid's father, it was also, it was losing the businesses, because I worked so hard to build those businesses. And yeah, so I had a lot going on in my personal life at that time, and not even to mention on a financial level too. That was the first time in my whole life that I have felt financial pressure. So that was really hard.
Okay. And so with everything that was taking place throughout, obviously the financial pressure, the breakdown of the business, the obviously breakdown of your relationship with your the father of your kids. Where did you go from there? So how was I guess, what were the steps or the events that sort of led to you then ending up in a relationship where you were allowing these things to take place? Yeah.
So look, at that time I felt as though, the separation with my kid's dad was so back and forth that was almost suffocating me. We'd been together for 9 years, and for many reasons he didn't want to let go, because my family was his family. He never had a family growing up, and he didn't want to lose his family,
Of course.
There was nothing wrong with our relationship. It's just he wasn't my person, and I knew that, and I knew that it was doing him a disservice and also myself a disservice to continue to stay in that relationship.
Gotcha.
And I felt at that time that I had no other choice but to, I guess, exit the relationship in a really unhealthy way. Like, I walked away. I ended up walking away from the businesses because he didn't want to, separate the businesses. He didn't want to, separate our life in general. We owned so much together. So it wasn't easy.
Of course.
It was never going to be easy. But that is my knowing of that wasn't my person. So I wanted to, go down that path. And because of how much friction there was and I guess resistance on his end to cut paths, that I felt like at that time I had no choice but to walk away from those businesses. And with the, I guess, just the turmoil that was going on within me, because not only was I separating with the father of my kids, my mum and dad have a beautiful relationship. They've been together for 15 years. They're married. They, and also my grandparents. So it was kind of like a part of me was like, I was just there for so long because that's what I thought that was meant to be. Like, that's how I thought that everyone else wanted me to be.
Yeah, so you're living into, I guess, the expectations that others had placed upon you because of your life experiences as opposed to what you actually needed within your soul.
Yeah.
What was actually authentic for you.
Yeah. So, like, having a separated family, like, no one around me had that. And, like, I felt so much guilt and so much shame for walking away from, again, my kid's dad is a beautiful human. And there was nothing wrong with the relationship. I just knew there was more for me.
For sure.
So that was a hard decision in itself. And I had a lot going on the financial level. My mum and dad were also getting financially hit because of, my decisions of walking away, liquidating a hair salon, trying to sell another salon. Like, hairdressing is all I ever knew. Like, hairdressing is all I ever knew. So I didn't know any other way to make money. So that kind of led me to avoiding what
And when you say avoiding, what do you mean by that? What was the way that you were avoiding at this time?
I started going out. I wouldn't say I was like partying, but I started hanging around, I was in this little bubble in Brisbane where it was like all these business owners that would just go out all the time. That's all that we would do is like on the weekend, like I would work insanely big hours through the week, and then even though by the way, Money would have been only not even 2 yet. She would have been 1 at that age. And here I was going out just because I didn't want to be at home. I didn't want to be I didn't want to pretend to be a family. I wanted to be separate, but there was just no movement in that. I didn't know how to leave. And so I ended up just going out all the time. I literally started partying. I started just, making friends that weren't really friends. Like, they were just friends around partying.
Yep.
And yeah, I was doing that in the midst for about a year, and I had met my DV ex-partner, and then things just took a turn from there.
I guess talk about where it started with that, and I guess how his behaviour then affected you.
Yeah. Okay, so this started on the 23rd of December in 2020.
So you guys have been together for about a year at this point?
Yeah, just about a year.
Yeah.
So we lived together in an apartment, and it was we'd have been going through some stuff by that point.
Yeah.
And I remember we organised to go out. So he was working that day. I think I just worked a little bit in the morning, and then we'd decided that we were going to go out with our friends. So I ended up finishing at like 3 o'clock in the afternoon, catching up with all our friends. Mind you, it wasn't just my friends, it was also his. And he was supposed to come and meet us. I then messaged him and I was like, hey, we're at, I think it was 6s and 7s. Are you going to come meet us? And he was like, look, I've had a really big day. I'm probably not going to come. And I was like, I was a little bit disappointed that he wasn't going to come. And I was like, okay, well, I'm already with everybody. I won't be, home too late, but I'm not going to leave. I'm going to stay with everybody. and that was fine. Anyway, I believe he had a friend that was at our apartment, and they were both just drinking, doing whatever they were doing there while I was out. Anyway, so it had been about, I think it was like, I don't know what time, 7 or 8 o'clock at night, and we went to a club. Anyway, again, I was still with all of his friends and all of mine, and I get a phone call from him saying, "Where the fuck are you?" And I was like, "We're at a club." He was like, "You're cheating on me." And I was like, "I'm cheating on you." I was like literally standing there with everybody. I was like, "I'm not cheating on you. I'm literally here with your friends." I'm pretty sure I gave the phone to one of them. I literally sent photos of everybody that we were with. And I was like, "There's no cheating here. Like, I've not done anything wrong." Anyway, hung up. And then I remember getting a phone call from his mate that was with him in the apartment. He was at the front of the club. And he was like, "You need to come out and come home." And I was like, I'm not going home. Like, what? Why? He was like, because he didn't want to come into the club. He couldn't actually get into the club, to be honest. I'm pretty sure they told him to leave because he was just that fucked up. And I was like, "I'm not leaving." Oh my goodness, I'm getting emotional already. So then I ended up leaving not long after because I was just like upset that I was getting, what's the word?
Told what to do,
but also accused of cheating.
Of course.
So I was like, I'm literally here with all of our friends. Like, who am I fucking cheating on you with? Anyway, so I ended up going home, and I was drunk, but I wasn't like, didn't know what I was doing. And he had been obviously smoking ice with his mate, and he'd only just left. And then I can't remember exactly what happened, but he was yelling at me when we got back home. And I was like, I'm not going to stay here. I'm actually going to leave. I don't want to be here if you're going to yell at me. And he was like, it was just like back and forth. He was like, "Show me your phone. You're cheating on me." I was like, gave him my phone. He was like, he still was just going on about me cheating on him. Anyway, I think we ended up going back upstairs. I didn't stay anywhere that night. So we went back upstairs, but then he'd left and he wasn't there in the morning. And I was like, okay. Anyway, so it basically started from there. So it started from me cheating on him, which I hadn't cheated on him. And it was obviously Christmas in 2 days.
Yep.
So that day was Boxing Day, and we had organised to have Christmas with my whole family was coming to our house. Anyway, he just didn't come home. I didn't know where he was. He called me a few times and said that we're done, that I needed to get out of the house. And I was like, "It's Christmas. My family are coming here." I'm like, "I'm not getting out of the house. If you don't want to come home, that's fine." And he'd called me a few times. It was a really odd experience. It was like one moment he was just like, he was so okay. He was like, "Show me your phone records." And I was like, "Oh, I'm happy to show you my phone records. You can have a look through my phone, do whatever you need to do." And then all of a sudden he'd just flip and he'd just turn around and be like, he'd fucking just lose it at me. And I was just getting confused because I was literally getting whiplash from his emotions. It's crazy. So then Christmas Day, I hadn't slept. I literally hadn't slept because I was just so emotional for those 2 days. I had the kids. So I was trying my best just to put on a brave face. And I guess a part of me was just also really embarrassed because I had my family coming and he wasn't even there on Christmas Day. My kids, and Christmas Day is one of the best days of my life. It always has been.
Yeah, it's really important to you.
Yeah, and for my kids to wake up and have that same beautiful experience, I always wanted to maintain that. So there was so many areas where I was just so upset. I was embarrassed because he wasn't there.
Yeah.
So he didn't come home. It was Christmas Day. We were supposed to we did have Christmas morning with my family. They still ended up coming over. I had to call my mum and my dad and tell them what was going on. So they still came over, and we were supposed to be going to his family the second half of the day. So I begged him. I was literally begging him to come home because all I wanted was him to be home for Christmas and to be with my family, and then to just do the normal family stuff on Christmas. That's all I wanted.
Of course.
And then we ended up going to his parents, his family's at Christmas lunch, and he ended up coming back just before Christmas lunch, and he was, just said hello to my family, and my family left, and we went to his house, and then we went to his house, and I was like, I just was questioning everything. I was like, where have you been? What have you been doing? Like, what's going on? Like, I don't even know where we're at. Where have you been?
Yeah.
And I ended up going through his phone, and I seen all these videos of him and his friend. Like, they literally thought it was so cool to video themselves while they were smoking a pipe. Never even knew what a pipe fucking looked like in my life. Now I do. So seen all these videos of what he was actually doing the last couple of days, and I was like, he ended up going to sleep on Christmas. It was the most fucking horrible Christmas of my life. And he ended up going to sleep.
This was 2020. 2020.
Yeah. So I ended up sleeping all afternoon, and you can imagine how my insides were just like,
I just want to fix this.
Oh,
yeah.
I just didn't even know. I didn't even know how to fix this. And
but you wanted to deal with the problem right there.
I wanted to deal with the problem right then and there, but I knew that he was just not in the right mindset. He's obviously just been awake for the last fucking 2 days. So after that, we had a conversation. I think it was over the next few days. Basically, look, I find it really hard to remember all the things that took place over that time from about the 26th, like that day, 26th to about the 6th of January was a really, really confusing time for me. I actually had one of my best friends come down for school holidays. That was always the plan. And he wasn't there at all. I still got her to come down, and I'm really, really grateful that she was there at that time. She also has a daughter, and I had my kids throughout the school holidays, so I was just still going out. I was like, you know what, do whatever you need to do. He was like, he's not coming home. I'm like, sweet, just like, I'm going to do my thing. Like, I just didn't know what to do. Yeah. I really didn't know what to do. I couldn't even have a conversation with him either. So I was going out. He would then call me and ask for my email address. He would ask to have all my passwords for my iCloud, for my Messenger, for literally every app that I had on my phone. He wanted to go through and did go through. There was a few times, one particular time that came up over the school holidays. My girlfriend and I went to see, Wet n Wild, and we were just taking the kids to Wet n Wild. I remember he called me, and my girlfriend knew full well what was going on at that time. He'd come home a couple of times when she was there, and she seen the state of him. And he called that day, and he was like, "Where the fuck are you?" I was like, we're just at Wet n Wild. We've got the kids. We're at Wet n Wild. He's like, you're fucking lying to me. You're a fucking lie. He's like, put your FaceTime on right now and you show me. Like, everything was just like, he had to see proof of everything. Everything was like so, like, he had to know everything in depth.
Yeah.
And so throughout that period of time, it was like he was going through my emails. He was going through my phone records. He was going through my social media. One night I ended up going out to my mum and dad's and staying because he wanted to go home and get clothes, and I said, I'll just go and stay with my mum and dad for a couple of days and you can go and stay at the apartment. And I remember going back to the apartment, like, this is the kind of crazy shit that he was doing. I went back to the apartment. He had pieces of paper of people's names and people's numbers that he had exported from my Facebook and my Instagram. He literally, everyone on my Facebook and Instagram, he exported everyone's data, and then he went through, he had those pieces of paper of everybody, and then he had my phone records, and he was going through my phone records to see if any of the numbers matched up.
Wild.
So
Look, you got to give the man some credit for being persistent, but holy fuck.
some of the stuff he was doing was insane.
Yeah, it's wild.
Like actual insanity.
Yeah.
And like I knew that it was just going downhill.
Mm.
There was one night where my girlfriend and I, she was obviously staying at our house, and we were so scared. We were so scared with the things that he was calling and the things that he was doing, knowing full well that he was on that drug and hadn't slept for however many days. I remember one night specifically, she actually talked to him on the phone, and she was like, you actually just need to come and sit down and talk to her. And because I was like, everything's so up in the air, like what the fuck is going on? I was like, because I'm like, if we can't fix this, then
let's just do it, let's go, yeah.
Whereas it was just like, he just was so back and forth, I didn't know what was going on. So she literally acted like a mediator. I remember sitting around our table and we put the kids to bed, and this is how scared we were, right? We were so scared that him and his mate that were doing the same stuff, that were going to possibly hurt us or hurt the kids, that I said, okay, if anything happens, I need you to grab the kids and I need you to run. And I was like, just call my mum and my dad. And I wrote numbers. I wrote numbers on a pieces of paper, and she put it in her shoe. She put it in her shoe because she was so scared that if he took her phone from her, or if he took any of the things from her, that she wouldn't be able to help me. So after that, she left, and I remember we actually sat down at a table and we had a conversation. And after the conversation we had with him, he left again. That for the last time, I was just like, I can't do it. I can't do it. I've got to get out of this. And she sat there and she looked at me across the table, and I'll never forget the look that she gave me. She said, Tiani, if you don't leave, you're going to be one of those girls that are murdered. Like, you're going to get killed. He's going to kill you. And I played it off. I was like, he'd never do that to me. I was like, he would never do that to me. I was like, it's the drugs. I just need to help him. It's just the drugs. So I remember her leaving. My whole family at that point knew a little bit, not the whole lot, knew a little bit about what was going on. And my girlfriend had actually spoke to my mum and dad, and I didn't know that, I wasn't in a good mindset. I was still like justifying everything that he was doing. And my girlfriend had talked to my mum and my dad, and my mum had not been able to sleep for days because no one knew whether one day I just wasn't going to be alive anymore. And so after that had happened, I think that was like probably like the 2nd or 3rd of January by that time.
Yeah.
And he had come back a couple of days trying to like fix things, but by that time I called my kid's dad and I said, hey, I just want to let you know that I can't have the kids for a little while, as everything is really unpredictable right now for their safety. I need you to have them, and I need you to have them for the next couple of weeks. And so I just knew that things were about to get really heavy, really, really heavy, and it was about to go really, really quick. So, yeah, I think it was like the 5th, yeah, because on the 6th of January, I moved out. But why I moved out was because on the 5th of January, he came home and he was basically like, we were trying to, fix it. He wanted to go see someone. We booked somebody in. We actually booked to go and see somebody on the 6th of January. And he had been doing ice in the house the whole time, and I didn't even know. Had no idea. I walked into the kids' bathroom because I was cleaning the house, and I seen this like little thing sitting on the kids' bathroom, and I was like, what is that? I've never seen that before, and opened it, and it was a glass pipe.
In like a sunlight glasses case?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I never knew, I'd never seen one before, and I just had enough by that point, and I remember screaming out his name and saying, "Come here." And he came came close to where the bathroom was, and I said, "What is this?" And he said, it's the only thing that makes me happy. And I grabbed it and I smashed it on the ground. And he started losing it, said that it meant more to him than me.
Mm.
And at that point, I called my dad straight after and I said, "Dad, I need to move out. I need your help." My dad literally was there within 30 minutes and had a truck and moved all of my stuff out that day. And that was really hard. That was really hard because for me, in a relationship, I don't give up, you know? I'm like, I want to help fix this. Like, it was really, really hard to leave. And yeah, it was, it brought up a lot. It brought up a lot for me at that time, but I knew it was the best what needed to happen.
Of course.
And then, so on the 6th of Jan, I think that on the 8th, 9th and 10th, the 8th, 9th and 10th of January, that was when the COVID, that was the second round of the lockdown and we were going into a lockdown for 3 days. He called me on the day, on the 7th, and he said he'd been to see somebody, and I was like obviously really proud of him. That was the first time that he'd ever gone to see somebody. And then he was like, "Look, like I really want to, like try and work this out." And I was like, "Okay, but, I've just moved out." I was like, "We can see how things go, going to see somebody. Like, we're not doing this right now."
Yeah.
Anyways, it was COVID, and he was like, "Well, can you just stay with me for the 3 days of lockdown?" And I was like, "Yeah." So I ended up staying with him. Had just moved my stuff out the day before, and then ended up staying with him for 3 days over that lockdown, and it was honestly the most incredible 3 days. He was no, he was so done with what he'd been doing that he wanted to get help. He genuinely wanted to help himself, and I guess being isolated as well, he realised that him hanging out with a specific friend wasn't helping, and all the behaviours that he'd been doing, like it was like he'd done a fucking 360, and I was like, all the things that he was saying, I was like, this is all I've been trying to show you. I was like, I don't know what's happened, but you've just completely shifted. So those 3 days were incredible. We were great. And then coming to the day that changed my entire life, that was the 10th of January 2021. And that morning was the end of lockdown, the third and final day. I woke up and again, back on the phone, I was asking for my phone records. That's all he kept asking for. So that morning I had thought that we'd gotten past this. I thought we'd gotten past this whole situation. By the way, just to take context, I had 2 phones at that time. One of them was my old business phone, but I didn't want any more and I wanted to get rid of that. So I had just gotten a new phone probably like a couple of weeks ago. Still haven't transferred all my data over. It was literally a brand new phone. So I had 2 phones. And so the one of the phones, he kept on asking for the data, and I was like, that morning I was just like, you know what, I can't do it anymore. I was like, I was so strong in that, like I was so done. I finally had got to a point where I was like, all right, I'm walking away from me. I'm not doing it for you anymore. I ended up calling my girlfriend because I didn't have my car at that time. And I called my girlfriend, and that was early, like probably 8, 9 o'clock in the morning. And he was just really forceful of like getting this phone records. And I was like, you know what, I'm done. I'm leaving. Left. My girlfriend lived around the corner from us. She picked me up, and I was at her house basically just, debriefing her on everything that's been happening. I blocked his number. I changed all my passwords. Like I was really real. Like I was like, I was done. He was literally on everything. He had access to absolutely everything, even like locations. He knew where I was, so I turned locations off. I changed all my passwords. I even made new passwords, like made new accounts on things because I just didn't want to be a part of that, like him to be a part of my life anymore. Anyway, so blocked his number, deleted absolutely everything, and then it would have been around 1 or 2 o'clock in the afternoon, I got a call from a private number, and I was like, here we go. And it was him, and he was like, Tiani, I'm not well. Can you take me to the hospital? I said, I'm sorry, but I'm not that person for you anymore. Call your parents. Call somebody else that will take you. I'm not taking you. I'm so sorry. So I hung up on him, and he called back a fair few times, and I was like, I'm just not doing it. Anyway, you know, when you get those like notifications saying someone's logged into your emails, I got that at around, it would have been around 3:30 that he'd logged onto my emails, and he'd logged into my location services. So he knew exactly where I was. He called me up again, and that was probably about 4 o'clock at that point, and said, I know exactly where you are. He was like, don't fucking lie to me. I'm coming to get you. And I was like, there's nothing I could actually do. I could already feel the aggression and the anger in his voice, and my girlfriend was there by herself. So my girlfriend was like, you're not going. I was like, I have to go, because if I don't go, he knows where I am. So this is going to end really bad for you. So I was like, I have to go. And she was like, I remember her saying that she felt so sick. She said, something bad is going to happen. Please don't leave. She was like, I'll call the police. And I was like, it's fine, I'll go. Anyway, so I ended up walking downstairs. I had my bag, and I just had my bag, and I had my phone in my hand, and I walked out, and I could see the car, but I couldn't see where he was. And he jumped out of a tree, like a bush behind me, and like grabbed my bag and grabbed my phone and started walking. And I was like, you can take my stuff. I'm not going. What are you doing? And he was like, no, you're going. Grabbed me by my arm and pulled me into the back of the car. And we lived not far away, probably about 5 minutes, but I remember sitting in the back of the car. He was driving, ran red lights, like main intersections, was going through red lights, and I was like, you need to calm down. You literally are going to kill us. He was like, you shouldn't have got in this car. And I was like, well, you made me get in this car. He was like, you have no idea what I'm about to do to you. And I was like, okay. At that time, I didn't really understand. So we got back to the apartment, and I remember going in the elevator, and all he kept saying to me is, you need to give me answers. And I kept on saying, answers about what? Answers about what do you want? He's like, I want the phone records. I was like, have the fucking phone records. Have the phone records. Have my phones. I don't need it. I don't need any of this. He was like, when we get into this house, I hope you know what I'm about to do to you. And I was like, okay. He's like, I'm going to smash your fucking head in until I get answers. And at that point, I was like, didn't really believe that he would do something like that to me. So as we got into the house, I was standing up like I obviously didn't want to be there, put my things down, stood up in the house, and he was standing at the kitchen bench, and he was making himself a drink. I said, you've been drinking all afternoon. He's like, yep, I've been drinking since 9 o'clock this morning. And I was like, I can smell it on you. So then he grabbed my phone. He come over and grabbed my phone and put my phone in front of me and said, call your kid's dad. And I just literally stood there and looked at the phone. And he said, call the kid's dad so you can watch me kill him in front of you and the kids. And I was like, what are you talking about? What are you actually talking about? He was like, I am going to kill the father of your kids, and I'm going to do it in front of you, and I'm going to do it in front of your kids, so call him. And I was like, I'm not calling him. I'm not going to call him. He came over and grabbed the phone and had the phone in his hand and smacked me across the left side of my face and told me to call him. And I was in shock. That was the first time he'd hit me, and I just remember being just a little bit spacey, being like, I was just in shock that he'd hit me.
Like, what the fuck just happened?
Yeah. And I was like, okay, I was like I was scared by that point. I grabbed the phone and I called my kid's dad. It called, there was no answer. And I was like, fuck's sake, like, thank fuck you did not answer. And then he got up and made himself another drink and was just drinking in the kitchen. And he came back over to me and said that you are going to get your phone records. I said, you can have my phones. I literally gave both of my phones, put them on the bench. I said, I'm not fucking staying here for this. Have both of my phones. I'm leaving. And he was like, you can leave. You can leave. And I was like, all right. I walked towards the door. He ran towards the door and stood in front of the door, and he goes, you're fucking kidding yourself if you think that I was going to let you leave. And I was like, I am leaving. I was like, please let me go. I was like, what are you doing? And by that time, I remember looking at him just when he was in front of the door, and his eyes were glazed black. There was like, it was like his soul had left his body. And so he was standing there, so I turned back around and I went and sat at the kitchen, at the table, and I sat down and I was like, what are you doing? I was like, you don't need to do this. And he said, if you don't get me those phone records, he was like, I'm going to keep smashing your face in, and the things that I'm going to do for you, to do to you for the next 3 days, I'm going to enjoy. And I remember he kept saying that. He's like the things.
And the reason for the 3 days is because it was going to take 3 days to get the phone records, right?
Correct. Yeah.
You forgot that part.
Well, I was getting to that part because he actually got my phone and then put a submission in to get the phone records at that time, and it came back. An email came back and said it's going to take 3 days for them to send me the phone records. And he said, well, over the next 3 days, I'm really going to enjoy the things that I'm going to do to you. And I was like, okay. So at that point, I was like, all right, well, you've got the phone records now. You're going to have it in 3 days. I'm going to leave. And I actually got up and I started walking out the door. And I could hear him following behind me, and he grabbed me, pulled me back inside, and there was we had like a circle dining table and some chairs, and he was like, you're not fucking going anywhere, pulled me back inside and pushed me over one of the chairs. And then that was the second time where I was like, he's for real here.
He's serious.
He's being serious. Like, this isn't him just talking. Like, he's completely gone. And so then he got my phone again and sat me back up on the chair, put me back on the chair, and then put my phone on the table and said, keep calling him until he answers. So I kept calling, and I'm just so grateful that he didn't answer. And then because he wasn't answering, he kept on grabbing my phone and smashing me over the face. So my whole left side of my face, I remember my left eye, I couldn't see out of my left eye, and my whole other side of my face, I couldn't hear out of my ear either. And so that was the first little bit where I was just still in shock. I didn't really understand what was happening. I was like, I can't quite grasp why you're doing this. And then there was multiple things he says, and this is the thing, like, I can't even really remember exactly what happened that day.
Yeah.
Because, like, I think it was so traumatic for me that it was like, it's my coping mechanism
And
to
the
keep
body
me
will
safe.
push it away because your nervous system will go into shutdown, even just remembering it, probably, babe. And you know, it's like they say, trauma isn't what happens to you, but what happens internally, what happens inside the body.
Yeah.
And so I can only imagine what was happening for you internally at this point in time.
Yeah. And by that time, because he'd hit me across the face a few times and I'd tried to leave, he actually, the first time he did this, he pushed me over to the couch and put his hands around my neck and strangled me. And I couldn't breathe. I was trying to gasp for air, and he kept saying, "You're a fucking sook and nobody's going to save you." He said, he kept on, every time I would be like, "Get off me," or if I couldn't even scream. He obviously had his hands around my neck. He kept on saying, "I'm a sook," and looked me in the eyes and said, "No one's going to come and save you." And that was when I was fucking scared at that point. Like,
Sure.
Being hit across the head is very different to being forced onto a couch with a man putting his hands around your neck. It's very, very different. I remember getting off the couch from that point and thinking, this is actually really bad, and I don't know if I'm going to come out of this. He told me that he had a gun in the house, which I know that he had. And at another point in time, he had gone up to the kitchen bench again to make a drink and grabbed a knife out of the kitchen and said that everything that he was doing to me, that he was thoroughly enjoying, and that for the next 3 days he's going to kill me, my kid's dad, my kids, and himself. And he's going to make sure that I watch it all. And he put the knife down and we were running around the kitchen. Like, I was so fucking petrified. I didn't know how to get out of it. So mind you, our apartment was 14 stories high, and anytime I screamed or anytime I made noise, he would hit me, he would suffocate me, he would torture me in any sort of way. Running around the kitchen bench, I was just trying to get away from him because, again, I tried to call the kid's dad and he didn't answer, and that's why he was running around the kitchen bench trying to chase me. He then flipped a table on, the table's quite a marble table, so tipped a table on me because we were running around the table and he couldn't get me, so he tipped the table on me, and because I got stuck, he then started punching me while I was stuck underneath the table. So I ended up being able to get off out of the table, and that was the time where I was like, okay, I need to get out of here. I'm going to die. Yeah. I then went and sat over on the couch again, and I was fucking exhausted. I'd been running around this apartment like a fucking idiot trying to get away from this man, and he had got my phones consistently. The thing that he just kept on doing is grab my phones and kept on punching me over the head. And then that was the second time after that we had been running around the kitchen bench that he came over and he put his hands around me again. But this time it was much worse. This time I stopped. I couldn't breathe for quite like a significant amount of time. And by that time I remember looking up at him whilst he was doing it, and there was just nothing in his soul, like he was soulless. Yeah. So after that, he said he was going to get the gun. I had 2 phones, and there was the third time he actually strangled me and suffocated me 3 times, but the third time was by far the worst time that it had happened. I was sitting on the floor of the couch, And I was so zoned out. I just remember watching him walk, like he's pacing back and forth. You could see that he knew he had gone too far. He'd gone too far, and he even voiced that. He said that he's going to grab my phones because he's going to kill me. He needs to get rid of these first. That he knew he had gone too far, that he had to keep going. And when I heard him say that, I knew that he meant it. Because the state of me from what he had done over the last couple of hours, he knew. He knew. It was like there was a moment for him where he kind of like came back and he was like, look what I've done, you know.
Oh, fuck.
Yeah. So, whilst I'm sitting on the ground, again, this was the third time, I think I had nearly, I'd almost passed out because when I was trying to catch my breath back, it was so fucking hard to breathe, and I had marks around my throat. So I was holding myself like this, and then I was sitting on the ground, and I actually gave up. That third time, I remember that I gave up. I stopped fighting because I was like, there's no getting out of here. I can't run to the door. He's going to catch me. There's an elevator. Like, how do I get out of here? I can't get out of here. I'm on a balcony. There's nowhere for me to go. I actually accepted that I was going to die that day. And then something came over me when I was sitting on the ground. There was a moment where he went into the room to get a gun, and then he put my phones on the bench whilst he went into the room to get a gun, and then he said, all right, I'm going to kill you. I'm going to get rid of these first. So when I was sitting on the floor, I watched him walk over to the balcony, and there was like a split second where I was like, you can't give up, and my kids popped into my mind. I was like, those kids need you. And that was probably the moment where I was like, because just before that I'd completely given up, I'd completely just surrendered to dying, and I was like, when I seen the kids pop up and I seen their little faces, and I was like, no, you need to be here for them, like 100%. They can't lose you. So the moment he stepped to the left, the balcony door was on my left, and I was sitting on the ground, and he grabbed the phones, and as soon as I seen in the corner of my eye, he had stepped down on the balcony, I got up, and I fucking ran. I ran outside the door, and the door obviously was locked, so I was like fucking panicking, like I was just in all sorts, and I ran down 14 flights of stairs. So the fear that filled my body, because I also knew that he had a gun, and I was like, you know, if I'm running, who's to say that he doesn't see you later, or that he was going to meet me at the bottom of the stairs. That was my biggest fear.
Of course. That
he caught the elevator and that he was going to catch me down the bottom of the stairs. I ran, I can't even explain to you how quickly I ran down 14 flights of stairs. I've never ran so fast in my life.
Adrenaline's a fucking hell of a thing.
It's crazy. I got to the bottom of the stairs, and I remember the relief that I felt that filled me that he wasn't there.
Knowing that he wasn't there.
So I kept running. I ran to the IGA. There was an IGA really close to us. And I ran to the IGA and got somebody to call the police. I was obviously very disheveled. I had blood over me. I was already very bruised. I had no shoes on. My shirt was ripped. My pants were ripped. I obviously looked really, really distressed.
Yeah.
And I got to the IGA and I was so fucking scared that I was hiding in an aisle. I hid in an aisle and one of the IGA guys was like, just keeping me safe and as calm as I possibly can. He could. Because I was just so scared that he was going to come and get me and the kids. He just kept on saying that he was going to kill the kids. So at one moment I was safe and I was like, oh, the police are coming. I'm in the IGA. I'm with people. You know, I'm okay. And then I was like, fuck.
The kids.
Where's the kids? Where's my kid's dad? I was like screaming in the IGA for somebody to give me their phone so I could call my kid's dad to make sure that he obviously had my phones and wasn't calling him to get them to come there. So I asked the lady that was with me. There was a few people that were sitting with me and I was trying to call the kid's dad, but he didn't answer. I was just so scared because at that point I was like, I knew that I was going to be okay, but what about the kids?
Need those tissues after all.
Lucky we got them.
You're doing so well, baby. I'm proud of you.
Yeah, so the police were there within probably 5 minutes, not even that. And the thing was that he still, no one had caught him yet. Whilst I was in the IGA, he'd actually come downstairs and bashed an Uber driver to steal their car. By that time, I heard so many police on their way. There had been people, I didn't know at the time that people had in the apartment had already called the police, and people had called the police from downstairs as well. And when he stole the Uber driver's car, I already knew at that point, he had no hope. There was that many police that were coming to the scene, and he ended up driving back and getting caught. And then I remember standing with one of the police officers, and I seen him get put into the paddy wagon. And then all I can remember thinking was what I had just endured over the last, by that time I think it was around 6:30. So that had been the last 3 hours of just the same thing over and over again. And yeah, I remember seeing him get put into the paddy wagon, and all I could think about was he okay? And I had so many questions. Why did he do this to me? Why am I thinking about him after what I had just gone through? Not one part of me was thinking about myself. Every single part of me was thinking about him.
Was there a part of you that almost blamed yourself for what was going on for him? Not really. A lot of his, I guess from his point of view, I remember him always saying that I pushed him to that point. Yeah. That I was the reason that he was the way he was, or the way he acted that day. So it was a lack of responsibility.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, more so I was just really shocked, and I was in shock.
Yeah, for sure.
I was confused. I was scared, but I wasn't scared at that time knowing that he'd just been locked up. That put my mind at ease.
Yep.
Because I was like, he's just on drugs. Like, it's just the drugs. So when he's on drugs, it's kind of like I just thought because he's on drugs that he acts that way, but in his right mind that he would never do that, So for so long I thought that. So then from that point, honestly, that was just the beginning. That was just the beginning of a really destructive road. And I didn't even realize that was the start of something. After that, there was obviously police at the scene. I went back and I did a statement. I didn't even get a choice, but they put a PPO on me and him. So a PPO is when, so I'm quite sure it's a police protection order.
Yeah.
So you've got no choice. Like I think DVOs, you can go and put a DVO on someone, and that is a choice, whereas a PPO is basically like you have no choice. It's the police putting it on you. So there was a PPO on both myself and the kids. So once I did a statement, basically after that, I was just really in a weird headspace because he was left, like he was obviously locked up. I didn't know what was going on. I'd contacted his family to make sure that he was okay. I'd explained to everybody that what had just gone on. And at the time, everyone seemed to be really empathetic and really compassionate about what I'd just gone through. Little did I know that wasn't what the next few months was going to look like.
Yeah, so obviously all this took place and you guys ended up with a police protection order on you. And from what you've explained to me, you guys ended up back together, but it wasn't straight away.
It wasn't straight away, yeah. So we got...
And this is, sorry, let me interrupt there for a sec. This is pretty common for something that takes place within domestic violence relationships, right?
Yeah, it's very common. So I think, I'm not sure of the exact statistics, but I'm quite sure it's like 80 to 90% of domestic violence victims go back to their perpetrator.
Yeah.
And I completely understand now.
Yeah.
I completely understand, like, why. Again, what come up for me all the time was, he's not a bad person. He's just
It was that nurturing nature within you that wanted to help, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I just wanted to get him help. Like, I just wanted his family to get him help. Like, I genuinely just wanted him to be okay. And for some time after that, I was, back and forth with his friend, one of his friends speaking and, making sure they're okay and whatnot. But obviously everything was escalated into court and he was out on bail. And basically from there, we ended up... There was like 3 or 4 months that we didn't speak. We weren't able to. He didn't want to obviously speak because of the protection order that's in place. But there's still, even between that time, so many things that had happened. Like he, without me even knowing, he was placing basically a battle against me. He was trying to get me to drop the charges, but I didn't realise that at the time. That was the whole calculated.
Intention.
Yeah, that was all calculated, the act. So it was about 5 months after we got back together, obviously going against absolutely everybody, my family, my friends that supported me in that time. Obviously my mum was fucking petrified of, whether her daughter was going to be alive or not. And here I am going back to him. So that was a really hard time for me because I also was like, I just wanted him. Like I just was so trauma bonded to him as I just wanted him. And then, yeah, it was like, I pushed everybody away. I pushed my family away. I went against that. I went against my friends at that time. And I fully believed at that time that it was just the drugs, but it was very quickly. We were only got back together for a few months after that, and there was actually some more domestic violence scenarios that took place after that, and it was about 5 months where I ended up ending it completely. But during that time that we were together, we actually went to a mediation, and the brainwash that whole situation took me through, like I was trying to drop my charges against him. He and his family paid for a lawyer for me to get the charges dropped, for me to drop the charges. Like, that's crazy. So, but in saying that, out of all of that whole, like, you know, court situation, I met someone incredible, Christy, which I'm really excited about, because next podcast we have her on and we see from her perspective what happened at that time. But
and also talk more into domestic violence as well, because that's something she deals with quite regularly, right?
Yeah. And I'm very fucking grateful because...
And this is a lawyer that they'd paid for?
They pay for it, yeah.
The universe always provides.
Yeah, and so at that time I had no idea what was going on, no idea. I was just like, I didn't want his family to have to go through all of this. I didn't want him to go through all this, and I tried to drop charges. So I remember sitting at my first court date with Christy, and she was like, honey, we're not dropping charges. I was like, why? She was like, there's no way that you can drop charges. There's no way. Even if you wanted to, you can't. The severity of your case is...
It's no small matter.
It's no small matter. And without her guidance through that time, there were so many things in mediation that he wanted from me to do for him, and, to get from me to make him look better, for him not to go to jail, for all of it, And, I realised that it was all calculated from him and his family, and the reason why we got back together was really to make himself look better in court so he could prevent himself from going to jail, because the reason why I know that now is because after, certain other events took place whilst we were going through mediation, all of that, is because once I finally, for myself, was done to my absolute core, I was done with the relationship, I was done with the situation, because I hadn't been done yet. And once I'd got to that point, I just seen how much everything shifted. His family, how disgusting they treated me, how he treated me, just because they weren't getting what they wanted. And I guess without Christy in my corner, I wouldn't have realised that had completely lost myself, and the things that I was trying to do for him was insane. Like, it was actually insane.
It's funny how his family completely changed their tune, right? And for them, it's like their son is a reflection of them. And so if he was to be charged with these things, they've taken it upon themselves, which is, I've seen this happen in previous case as well, where a son was charged with something very heinous, and the mother literally protected him to the ends of the earth, because for her to accept that was her boy that had done that was just too much for her to handle. And so it's almost like they take her on board full knowingly what has taken place, and almost condone, if not accept it.
Yeah.
Crazy.
But that was definitely what was going on.
Yeah, because they wouldn't want it, because obviously it's a reflection of them. That's how they feel, that this is their son. Yeah. I mean, even myself, I feel that with my mum. She blames herself a lot for my drug addiction and all that sort of stuff, which isn't the case. We all make our own fucking choices.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was that was needed. I feel like I needed to go back to him, because now I understand what it's like, and for me stepping into the space that I am for women and children in domestic violence, like, I wouldn't be able to relate to a woman that just ended it straight there and then. Now I understand what it's like to go back. And the thing is, like, I always blame that drug specifically. I always blamed drugs in general for making him like that. But after that, he actually did go and get help. He had to for his court. Went to rehab and did all the things. Turns out, like, he did actually have bipolar and something else I can't remember. But by taking those drugs, it would cause him to go into a complete, is it psychosis?
Psychosis, yeah.
Yeah.
So it's like almost complete disassociation from the self.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was an interesting journey. But that all being said, that was just only the very beginning of my healing journey.
I guess at the end of the day, we all have our stories. We all have the catalyst that helps us to, I guess, go on that journey of healing. I mean, myself, it was an ice addiction. For you, it was dating someone with an ice addiction. It's funny how that lines up to some degree, right? And I think that's one of the first conversations that we had. But, I mean, just to finish this one off, I'd love to actually hear from your perspective, like, what are the things that women, or even men, can look out for within relationships to go, hang on, maybe something's not right here? Because that's obviously, I guess, something you ignored, the signs, you ignored them, the red flags. They were like, oh, they're only kind of orange. It's all good. What were the things that really stood out to you that if you hadn't have ignored them may have led to a different outcome or may have led to a different part of your journey?
The thing is, when you say red flags, I didn't even know what red flags were.
Right. Okay. So let's talk about the behaviour that sort of showed up in your relationship, which now you would...
now I'd understand.
Now that you would see as domestic violence.
Oh, definitely. Okay. There's a few things, like, I definitely look at their body language, how they handle situations. There was many situations that now I look back and I was like, oh, that's a red flag. Certain situations like that aren't a big deal. Just for example, there was a change in work or actually a good example, his work car got broken into and things got stolen, right? Like, yes, that fucking sucks, right? When your things that you've worked so hard for get stolen. But the amount that it affected him and his aggression that came from that. And
was that aggression he was taking out on you also?
Not just me, just his whole surroundings.
Yeah.
So it's like aggression comes out, and I believe, and like you can see it in the little things in their life.
Yeah.
So
a massive lack of emotional intelligence.
Yeah. Something that's so, I'm not saying there's certain things that, even I get angry, but the thing is, like, I don't get angry in a way that it affects everybody and everything, then it ruins my whole day. It's like, okay, I'm upset, I'm angry, I regulate my emotions. The emotional regulation side of things is most definitely the thing that I look out for now.
Yeah.
But also, I guess, the drugs and the alcohol consumption is something that I personally, I don't believe that somebody that does drugs that heavily and drinks that much is okay.
Yeah.
Like, they are band-aiding something.
For sure.
Something much, much deeper, and they may not know what it is yet.
Yeah, it's like a ticking time bomb almost.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, just the behaviours. So just the behaviours definitely around drugs and alcohol, and also the aggression. The thing is, like, this all took place in one whole event one day. Yep. This wasn't something that was carried out throughout our whole relationship. It wasn't like I was being physically harmed throughout this whole relationship. This was very, like...
sporadic.
Yeah.
But this, obviously now you've got a greater understanding around domestic violence and how that shows up. So thinking about the relationship that you had, what were the signs that you did ignore, which I guess would be... classified as domestic violence? Because once again, I think this is more so an education piece as well around what domestic violence is and how it shows up.
On an emotional level, I want to touch on this because we touched on it yesterday because I had no idea about it. But sometimes, and people might relate, is if you haven't experienced domestic violence before, you probably don't even know what the signs are. You probably don't even realize that you're experiencing domestic violence. For me, I didn't realize that the emotional side of things, like throughout that whole year, even though I wasn't being physically harmed, emotionally, I was being stripped of my self-worth and completely just... like, it's like I'm completely irrelevant. I'm in a relationship with somebody that is so inconsiderate that I even exist sometimes.
Yeah.
But the back and forth, the unhealthy behaviors, you know, like in a normal relationship, if I was upset, you know, you would, in our relationship, you sit there and you understand where it's coming from. Whereas in that relationship, it was just like complete disregard. See you later, deal with that on your own.
Yeah.
You know, so there's so many situations. But one that I want to touch on that I've only just in the last week came up for me is the sexual abuse. And I wanted to touch on this because I feel like the way that I thought about it, sexual abuse is basically from somebody that you have never even met before, and it's forced, right?
Forced physicality, right?
Yeah, and that's what my outlook of what sexual abuse was. And then with a few things that had come up over the last week, knowing I had to speak about this today, I actually look back at a specific in between, there was like in between that period of where everything was going on and we weren't seeing each other. He obviously wasn't there, but there was one instance where I was like, it was New Year's Eve and I was begging for him to come home because I wanted to go do something. I was sitting at home by myself and I thought we were going to go do something. And he was like, yeah, okay, I'll come home. He literally came home, and again, if you understand the domestic violence side of things on the emotional level, it's like when they finally come around and you're like, oh, it's like you can breathe again.
The nervous system can relax.
Yeah, and you're like this, like, and they're like, you know, I understand, or they just try and tell you the things that you want to hear. I remember him coming back and telling me all these things that I wanted to hear, and then we had slept together. And again, it wasn't forced. It wasn't like I was like, no, I don't want to do this. Like I wanted to. But then afterward, he turned around and said to me, after he was about to leave, and said, that's all you're good for. And then that whole conversation prior was just
falsified,
words.
right?
Yeah. So the reason I want to bring that up is like that may not look like sexual abuse, but it's the intention behind it. The fact that somebody can say that to me after and leave straight away, the intention behind that is actually disgusting. And it makes me feel really sad and really sick. So if anybody else is dealing with situations like that where they're not being respected,
treated like a woman, or a man for that matter.
Yeah. But yeah, so that's another thing that came up. But yeah, on the emotional sides, I mean, that's a whole nother subject. We could sit here all day and speak about the different signs that had come up.
Well, babe, I'm really, really proud of you for having this conversation, having the courage to speak out where so many women wouldn't because of the fear that surrounds those kinds of topics. But also, you know, there's a lot of, because domestic violence, the word gets thrown around so much, there's a lot of cry wolf sort of stigma attached to it, right? But by you sharing your story, hopefully it encourages other women to come forward and speak out about their experiences, because it's only through having these conversations that we can really paint a picture of what takes place behind closed doors. Because until we can, nothing was going to change. And the system, the way it is, as you understand, the system's fucked. It's broken. And I guess this is the beauty of you starting out with your journey, with her journey, to try and create this safe place for women. So thank you.
It's okay.
Thank you for sharing your story. Thank you for being brave, and thank you for going first where many wouldn't.
Yeah, thank you. I think it's really important for me now, after many years of healing. Don't get me wrong, I definitely think there's a lot more to go. I really didn't understand how long it would take for me to heal.
Well, healing's not a dot on the map.
No, it really isn't.
It's a progression, right? It's a journey. But we all get this idea that healing is a destination. It's a choice within life.
100%. And now I just believe that it's my purpose now to honour the women that aren't able to or brave enough yet to speak out. And I want to be that voice. So then hopefully we can eliminate or even bring a lot more awareness to the world that domestic violence is a real thing, you know.
Well, baby girl, thank you for everything you've shared today. It still hurts my heart to hear that you went through that, but to see the incredible woman that you've become and continue to become and continue to grow into, in the way that you show up as a mother and as a partner now, you wouldn't even be able to tell. So that just is testimony to the healing that you've done with all the work that you've done within yourself.
Yeah, hasn't been an easy road, but we're here.
We're here. We'll see you on the next episode.